So good. So good. Just by a round of applause, have you guys enjoyed the David series so far? Has this spoken to you guys? I feel like the feedback that we're getting is that, man, every week it's like this is the word that people need, and we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Before I get into the message, I just want to say thank you to all the sponsors, to all the volunteers, to all the golfers, to all the givers to make yesterday's Fuse and Zone golf tournament a success. So let's give it up for all of our volunteers. Let's give them honor. Raising money for kids going to camp. We are always going to invest the most money of any area in our church in the life change of the next generation of Genesis Metro. So, without further ado, let's get into this morning's message. We're going to continue to see this dualism of the attitude of Saul versus the mindset of David. And as we kind of go down this road today, I just want you to know that I think all of us, as we hear David's story, I mean, what a story. I mean, slaying the giant, all that stuff. You're kind of like, everybody's in your mind, you're like, I want to be David, right? I want to be David. But the truth of the matter is, we all have a little bit of Saul, right? We all have a little bit of stubbornness. We all have a little bit of us that ignores all the warning signs that are before us. And so today, as we walk through this path, I just want you to see that the part of Saul in us needs to die, and the part of David in us needs to rise. And as I'm going through counseling situations, whenever it comes to marriages, sometimes it comes to parenting, whatever it may be, you always see some people get to a place that we're going to find Saul in today. And that place it's a dark place, it's a scary place, and whenever I see someone get to this point, it makes me question whether or not there's going to be a coming back point. They will look me dead in the eye with their spouse sitting right there beside them, usually openly emotional. And they will look at me and they'll say, I don't care anymore. I don't want to listen anymore. I don't want to hear it from anyone anymore. It's almost like they've made up their mind and they're resigned to committing to the chaos of their sin. It's interesting. It's always interesting when they look at you and like, it doesn't matter what you say from that point. On a less serious note, I think that we all get pushed to that point, right? Like, any parents in here, your children ever like push you to the point? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Or like your spouses, like you ever push each other? Is anybody, is this only Carrie and I that we push each other's button? Anybody? It's like it keeps escalating and like you get to the point where you break the nuclear button out. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Like it's like you open it up and it's like one more word. Say it. You say one more word. You look at your kids. Is anybody like your kids driven you crazy and you're just like, I've heard Carrie say it from the other room in the distance. If you say one more word. Now this might be a little embellishment. If you say one more word, so help me God, they will call CPS on me. But anyway, I'm just saying, I've heard children be threatened. Anyway, and I think that people push us. And Saul has been pushed not by people, but by his own paranoia. And every step of the way, we're going to just see constantly in this dialogue that he's having in his own mind that his paranoia is taking over and it's invading all of these other areas, and he's gotten to the place that he just doesn't care anymore. And I hope today that if that's you, if you find yourself in that area, that you would listen to what Saul's end is, and then you would contrast and you would find yourself what David shows us is how to win. He gives us the other side of the coin. And the good news I have for you that at the end of today's message, I'm going to be able to give you a principle from David's life that no matter where you're at, no matter what you're going through, you can find the light in the midst of the darkness. And I look forward to sharing that. I just want you to begin thinking right now, when it comes to your life, if you're wanting to produce all of these good things, all of these God things, are you winning? Are you winning? Do you see it? Do you see the fruit? Do you see the evidence? Do you see that like godliness is rising in your life, the God voice is rising in your life, and even in your children that you can see like the God voice is rising in their life. When they come home, from church, they're talking about the sermon, or maybe every now and then you look across the room and are they actively participating in worship? Or when they come down out of the zone, do they have a story to tell you? Or maybe when something is struggling in their life, they're like, hey, mom, dad, like, you want to pray? And this actually happened to us last week. Did y'all see that like near tornado that came through? Anybody? It was like, we walked outside and wind was blowing stuff, leaves and everything so hard. And like literally we opened the door and stuff started flying in our house. And Silas looked at me, he's like, Dad, do you think we should pray? I said, son, I'm from Oklahoma. We don't pray till it touches the ground. That's the way we do it. And so we put it off and the storm passed. So today I just want you to begin thinking about, are you living out Saul's attitude or do you have David's mentality? Are you committed to the chaos? Or are you going to turn before it's too late? A couple of weeks ago, I gave you Yoda. Last week, I gave you the water boy. But today, to tee up the message, I have none other than Michael Scott himself from The Office. And as you watch this clip today, I just want you to begin thinking, like, how committed are you to the chaos of not listening to God? Roll the clip.
This is very good.
We are going to explore these three phrases. There's no road here. He said, it's up there. It's up there. There's no road down here. There's a lake. He said, it can't mean that. Did you guys hear him say that? It can't mean that. As we read through this next dialogue with Saul, last week we found that David ran to the priest's house. He ran to the voice of God when he was in despair. And the priest gave him some bread, gave him some provision, sought the Lord on his behalf, and gave him the sword of Goliath. Ahithophel was his name. He was the high priest of Israel. He was the highest voice of God in Israel, maybe competing with Samuel at this juncture. And so we're going to see that ultimately Ahithophel, that show of ignorance and loyalty to David, ultimately Saul is going to see in it paranoia. He's going to see that as an affront to him, and he's going to attack the voice of God in his life. And so let's get into the text for this morning. In 1 Samuel chapter 22, it says, and now Saul heard that David and his men had been discovered. And Saul was seated, spear in hand, under a tamarisk tree on the hill at Gibeah, with all his officials standing at his side, accelerating into the abyss. I mean, Michael floored it right off into the lake, committed to his own GPS, even though there was a voice trying to warn him of the impending doom. We can picture it in our minds, can't we? Saul sitting there with his spear in hand. If you've been here for the last several weeks, we know that the spear is kind of a unique part of this anthem that's being laid out before us. You know, he had taken this spear and he had thrown it at David 3 times. He had thrown it at his own son, Jonathan. And, it's amazing that, David, when he was out there with Goliath, he couldn't miss. But Saul, when he didn't have the hand of God on his life, he couldn't make. And so it's a good lesson for us that it won't matter what our skill level is or what our past success has been, that once God's blessing is gone, it doesn't matter what you do. It won't avail to anything. And so here he is sitting under this tamarisk tree with a spear in his hand. And it began to make me wonder about Saul's mindset. We never see that he was willing to put down the weapons and exchange them for worship. David was always choosing worship over the weapons, but Saul was always choosing the weapons over worship, and he keeps holding on to his weapons. Aren't we the same way in our relationships? The things that we know kind of work whenever we get in an argument, we do this, we do that, they do this, they do that. And so we hold on to our weapons. We have a standoff. And maybe some of you are bullies even in your relationship, and you're the stronger one. And so like whenever they come at you with truth, you constantly push them back into the corner and you hold on to your spear sitting under the tree. It's not getting better. You're accelerating into the abyss. And I started wondering, why is it that Saul won't lay down the things that are hurting people and pick up something that could help people. And so many times in our relationship, we keep holding on to the things that are hurting people. And we're not picking up the things that could help people. Saul is moving toward disaster. There's no road here. It's up there. And yet, Saul is committed. It says, he said to them, these are his men standing around him, see if you can find the paranoia in Saul's message. Listen, men of Benjamin. Will the son of Jesse, that's another name for David, will the son of Jesse give all of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you commanders over thousands and commanders over hundreds? It's like, is he going to promote you? I'm your king. Somehow in his mind, David must be paying them off in order for them to be this disloyal. Is that why you have all conspired against me? Everybody's against me. No one tells me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse. None of you is concerned about me or tells me that my son has incited my servant to lie in wait for me as he does today. Leave that verse up. Who is Saul blaming for David now? Now it's not even David. It's not the song that was saying, Saul has killed his thou. Y'all remember the great song that I sang several weeks ago? That's what kicked it all off. It was the praise of other people that he perceived was greater than the praise for himself. And then he got all insecure. And now it's not even the praise of others. It's Jonathan's fault. He's conspired. He's conspired against me. When you start committing to the chaos of sin, you have this, your mind is capable of making up so much stuff. Do you know that? Is everybody aware of this? That our Saul mentality makes up things that aren't true. We had a great sermon several months back, the story we tell ourselves. Here Saul has told himself a story that his own son is conspired with David, and now David is lying in wait. In Saul's mind, David is waiting around the corner to take him out at any moment. When the exact opposite is actually true. He's lying in wait for David at any moment, throwing spears, sending out mercenaries, has all of his lieutenants out looking all over the hillside for David. And it's amazing how we do this thing in psychology called projection. You better watch out. Whenever you see certain sins in everyone else and you only can fixate on those sins, it's oftentimes that we project our own weaknesses onto other people. Did you see the way she was looking? Did you see the way she was looking? Did you see the way she was looking? Yeah. Did you see the way that you were looking? Did you see the way that you were looking? Did you see the way that you were looking? If everybody's against you, could it possibly be that you have paranoia in your life? I like to ask people this question. I start pushing them down a road, because here we see in Saul's life there's a consensus of God's voices. All of the voices are going to say the same thing. And the next part of the dialogue we're going to get to in just a moment, the high priest himself is going to echo the same sentiment that his daughter and his son have told him about David. And yet, in Saul's mind, everyone is against me. The question I like to ask people is, do you think it's more probable that everyone else is wrong and you alone are right? That everyone else, that you can't find one God voice that agrees with you. You can't find a scripture, you can't find a pastor, you can't find a godly person that leads your life. You can't find it. But everybody else is wrong, right? Everyone's telling you need to go to counseling, but they're all wrong. Your finances are tanking, but you don't need to get counsel on that. Just commit. Just commit to the lake. Here's Saul having this conversation. And as he's in his paranoia, thinking now all of his men are against him, his son is against him, his daughter is against him. Nobody answers him a word, but there was this one guy named Doeg. Let's all say it on three. 1, 2, 3. Doeg. Doeg. Son of a Doeg, I tell you what. But Doeg, the Edomite, that's a pagan, that's Esau's clan, who was standing with Saul's officials, said, I saw the son of Jesse. He came to Ahimelech, and Ahimelech gave him provisions, gave him the sword of Goliath. Boy, snitches. Oh, what does snitches deserve? That's right. That's right. Live by that. Live by that. I do. Snitches. Doeg. Rats out Ahimelech. And Ahimelech, we're going to find out, like he didn't even know. Ahimelech was just doing his thing. He was doing what God told him to do. He was always beseeching on behalf of David. And so Saul, in a rage, summons Ahimelech to himself. Verse 13 says, why have you conspired against me? Do you hear like a record? Does anybody hear this? Like, didn't he just say that? Isn't it amazing how we keep having the same conversations with everybody? And like, we ignore all the God voices, but we keep going from person to person to person until we find some son of a Doeg, sucker, snitch that will tell us what we want to hear versus what God is wanting to say to us. I've seen it happen. I've seen people run around like a chicken with their head cut off, and they just, I got to go find someone that's going to agree with me, that's going to tell me it's okay for me to go and have this affair because then I'll be happy. And they'll ignore every God voice, and they'll find someone, some ungodly person with an unhappy marriage, and they'll listen to that person, help them walk right off the cliff into the abyss, and they will accelerate all the way to their own destruction. I'm going to tell you that's frustrating. That's frustrating. You can sit there and tell them it can't mean that. No matter which way you go, it can't mean that. There's no road there. It's up there. Ahimelech, why did you betray me? Conspire against me. Verse 14, Ahimelech answered the king, who of all your servants is as loyal as David? How do you think that felt? Fastball right to the face. Boy, you had to have some guts. You had to have, some definite testosterone here to stand up to the king and say, but who is as loyal as David? Your son-in-law? I mean, didn't your daughter marry him? Didn't you say you wanted your daughter to marry him? And now, wait a minute, wasn't he the captain of your bodyguard? I mean, the captain of the bodyguard is the one who's closest to the king, whose life might be on the line. The chief of the bodyguard is the one that's got to step in. He's willing to give your life. He's the one that fought the Philistine. I mean, he did all of that. And now you accuse me? Next verse. Was that the first time that I inquired of God on his behalf? He said, you can't lay this. Don't you dare lay this on me. He goes, I didn't even know anything about what you're talking about, great or small. I was just doing my job. I was reminded of, don't put this on me, Ricky Bobby. Don't you do it. I was like, in my mind, that's what like Ahithophel sounds like. Don't you put this on me, Saul. And yet Saul is wanting to blame everybody. And I got to admit that I am super good at blaming people for everything. Is anybody else like this? Does anybody else have this talent? When we're out on the boat and I hit a stump, I often just yell at the other person that's on the back of the boat. I just like, Ben, why'd you do that? But I really did it. I just feel the need to blame somebody. It makes me feel better. Am I the only one? Yeah, I know. Blamers out there. Feels good, doesn't it? If I can blame someone, I don't have to deal with me. Ahimelech said, I didn't do it, man. And David's the right guy. It says then in verse 17, the king ordered the guards at his side, turn and kill the priests. And even his own soldiers said, no. Saul, it can't be this. It can't be this. Murdering the voice of God in your life? Is that what it's come to? You want to kill the very person who could intercede on your behalf, who could figure out and unravel the mystery of what's going on in your mind? He says, rise up, kill Ahithophel and all of the priests. And his own servants said, no, Saul, it can't be this. There's no road here. It has to be up there. Saul, don't do this. Every single voice in your life is telling you not to do it, and yet you're trying to find some way to justify your actions. But you know who was there? Doeg. I hate Doeg. Saul pivots to Doeg and says, you turn and strike down the priest. And he rose up and he killed Ahimelech and 85 priests. And then he went to the town of Nob, his hometown, Ahimelech's hometown. He killed them all. Women, children, cattle, everything. Boy, once you commit to the chaos of sin, you can hear it in Saul's actions. I don't care anymore. I'm not listening anymore. I don't want to hear you say one more thing about what God has to say about it. I would rather murder every voice of God in my life. Once we commit to the path of the chaos of our sin, we start removing ourselves from the Bible. We remove ourselves from prayer. We remove ourselves from worship. We remove ourselves from community. And if we can just murder every voice of God in our lives, then somehow we can be at peace within. What a falsehood. Everyone, it can't be that. It can't be that that's the solution. It can't be. Whenever people start making dark choices, they'll remove every God voice in their life. I just want to ask you, that'd be a good reflection moment. Where's the voice of God in your life? When's the last time you said, God, what do you want? And then you did what God wanted. Who are you seeking counsel from? Whenever there's a twist, whenever there's a turn, whenever there's a fork in the road, are you listening to the voice of God, or are you just on autopilot? If you listen carefully, Michael Scott said, the machine knows. Everyone has their own GPS, and I promise you, it will not point north without the voice of God in your life. It will not. It will not. Isn't it amazing that the one voice that could bring revival, we remove it even when we're in the midst of the death spiral? I mean, the marriage is in the spiral toward death, and the one voice that could have brought revival, they shut it out. They removed it. The kids are descending, and I think some parents just say, well, I hope it works out someday. They're in the death spiral, but they remove the voice that could have spoken life and brought it back from the dead. See, only God can do stuff like that. And if we remove all the God voices, how are we ever going to get revived when we've headed toward death? Here was Saul, committed to the chaos. And I pray that I might preach to someone sitting in this room right now that your marriage is in the death spiral, and you even fight about the message that you hear on Sunday. You literally get out of here and you're like, I don't care what that preacher has to say. Don't you quote that to me. Don't you throw that in my face. That's exactly what they should throw in your face. Don't you know they emailed me what to preach today so that you would get it? That's what we do here. Come on, imagine how hardened you are that you won't even receive the message preached from his word, that you would actually use this as argument material. That's crazy. That's chaos. That's pride. That's paranoia. That is not the voice of God in your life. Here is Ahimelech saying don't do it. His men saying, don't do it. His son saying, don't do it. His daughter saying, don't do it. His men are all committed to the same message that David is the right guy, and yet Saul comes to the different conclusion that he's the wrong guy. Could it be that everyone else is wrong and you alone are right, even though God's witnesses are all singing the same song from the same sheet of music? When will you submit that you're wrong? I pray you will not murder the voice of God in your life. Where was David in all of this? If you go back up to the top of 22, it says that David had fled to the cave of Adullam. And I thought, what a contrast. What a contrast. When we picked up David's story originally, we found him in the pasture, and Samuel comes and anoints him, and he goes from the pasture to the palace, and that's the sexy part of the story. I think that's the part of the story that we all want. Like, oh, I want to be David. I want to be discovered in obscurity and given divine opportunity, and I'll kill the bear, and I'll kill the lion, and I'll kill the giant, and I hold his head in my hands and his sword. Yeah, that's what I want. I want to be David. But then David, through a strange twist and turn, different part of the story, second chapter, he goes from the castle to the cave. And I wonder, there's no way that David could have ever seen that part coming. I mean, his story was ascent, and now he's in the descent. Everything was going right, and now it seems like everything's going wrong. And I started wondering to myself, is it possible that there's something that we can't learn in the castle that we have to learn in the cave? That there's something that we have to go through in order to learn something about the character of God that you won't learn on the mountaintop when everything's right and when you're winning every day. But when things start going wrong, and when it doesn't go the way you thought it was going to go, and there's an unexpected twist or turn in the road, and God takes you from the castle to the cave, all of a sudden you begin to learn something about God that you would have never known before. And I wonder if that's what David was considering when he wrote one of his greatest hits, Psalm 139. He says, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence, God? He said, if I ascend into the heavens, you're there. He says, if I descend into the depths, and that word depths is actually Sheol, the place of the dead. If I go all the way to the bottom, he said, you're there. He says, if I rise on the wings of the dawn, and if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, and your right hand will hold me fast. Now, here comes the truth that's going to set someone free today. I hope you'll text us. I hope you'll come tell us that it was you. This was for you today. He said, if I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me. Leave that verse. Have you ever felt so alone that you wanted to pull the blanket of darkness around you and just disappear to the world? Disappear even to God? Maybe some of you haven't had that twist or turn in your life, but I promise you it will come for all of us. It will come for all of us. The marriage that used to be a bedrock is now imbalanced. The things you used to hold to that you knew would never change, and now they do. The health that's been healthy all your life, and now all of a sudden there's a scare. Oh, when you go from the castle to the cave, you'll learn some lessons that you can't learn on the mountaintop. You could only learn these in the valley. He said, I got to the place where I felt like maybe I'll just pull the darkness around me. You know what he found out about God at that moment? Next verse. I love there's always a next verse. That's probably a good sermon lesson. Even the darkness will not be dark to you. Even the night will shine like the day. For the darkness is as light to you. What was the lesson he learned in the cave that he couldn't learn in the castle? You see, Saul was walking in the daylight, yet his mind was in darkness. David is sitting in a cave in the darkness, yet in his mind, he's walking in the light. You see, it doesn't matter where you are. It matters what you have. And he had the presence of God. That will change everything in your story. It will turn even the darkness into light. You don't even have to move where you are. You have to change what you have. If you have the presence of God this morning, it will turn the darkness into light. And the church said, yes, yes, yes. If you sing the blues for a season, you will appreciate the blessing of his presence on the other side. If you're given a diagnosis that the outcome looks bleak, I'm telling you, you will appreciate his presence on the other side. When you have felt all alone, and then his presence came in, and you felt all alive, you will appreciate his presence. It's not our perfection that allows us to hold together as a church, as a family. You know what it is? It's his presence. We will never attain perfection, but we can. We can attain his presence. And David said, even when I was trying to run as far as I could and thinking of any way that I could get away from God, he said, even there, I find you. And you turn my light into darkness. I don't know who I'm talking to in here this morning, but I promise you that his presence would change it all. His presence would change it all. Don't fool yourself into listening to the wrong voices. They're telling you one thing. All the God voices are saying one thing, and you'll find that one worldly doeg. I hope you'll hear Dwight in your sleep tonight. It can't be that. Michael, it can't be that. It can't be that. There's no way you can justify you cheating. It can't be that. There's no way you can justify chasing after money. Did you leave your family? No, it can't be that. There's no way your kids can be hurting and in the corner and upstairs and aloof and isolated, and you're downstairs and you're just watching another show on TV, and you're not even investigating. You're not even intervening on their, not interceding on their. The solution can't be apathy. It can't be that. There's no road there. Everything in God's voice says it's up there. It's up there. If you would turn, it's up there. It's available. If you're in the abyss this morning, he's there. If you're on the farthest, most remote part of the edge of extinction, he's there. If the darkness has covered you, I want you to know he's there. If you would turn, he would transform your darkness into light, and man, you'd be set free. Everything would change. And you didn't even have to move. You just had to receive his presence into your life. Let's pray. Father, we ask in the name of Jesus that we would receive your presence this morning. That we cannot hide from your spirit. It finds us every time. It makes us uncomfortable in sin, and that's a good thing. It challenges us to our core to turn before it's too late. So many of us are accelerating into the abyss, and God is saying, don't do it. No one around you wants to go that way. Nobody around you is telling you it's a good idea. If that's the case today, then maybe you, as we stand in a moment, as we begin to worship God, maybe you would just say, God, I need your presence. God, I need the light. God, I need to know that you're here, that you're with me, that you'll hold my hand. Oh, I pray for the prideful person who keeps on doing it their own way, even though they're not winning, even though they're not worshiping. All they do is hold on to their weapons. They come to church every week without worship in their soul, within their heart. Not even a song on their lips, not a smile on their face, bathed in bitterness. The critical spirit always finding fault in everyone. Could it be possible that it's you? That it's you? That the reason why you can't find it is because it's not outside of you, it's inside of you. That's what it is. You have to change it from the inside, and then you could be okay no matter where you were at. No matter how dark it got, you would have the light in your life. It's not a fake joy that says, oh, everything's okay. No, it really is okay. When I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod, your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table for me in the midst of my enemies. I can sit down and be okay, even though I'm surrounded by the enemy, and say, God will provide, God will prepare, and somehow I will make it out of the valley of the shadow of death, and I will see the light of life on the other side. And the church said, amen. Will you praise Him?